Did you want people to go to the table or to the podium? Where did you want them, the podium or the table?
Is the mic on?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, I have 8 o'clock, and thank everybody for being here at this early hour. And just wanted to have a good Appropriations Education Subcommittee meeting and hear from anyone this morning that wanted to. But I'll start us off this morning with a short prayer, and then we'll get right to business. Let's pray. Our Father, we just thank you for this day. Just be with us. These coming days. Thank you for the blessings you give us each and every day, and just we ask you to give us the knowledge and the insights and the wisdom that we would need to make decisions here for our people, our state, and just be with our teachers, our children, and all those that are connected to education in our state. And just thank you for each and every one here. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Okay, first on this list, and thank y'all all again for being here, and members of my committee this morning. We'll go to Helen Sloat with first. Helen's, you're here, and if you can come to the podium, and we'd certainly.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Helen Sloat. I'm with the law firm of Nelson Mullins, Riley, and Scarborough, and we represent a number of child welfare providers. Those providers are members of Together Georgia, Multi-Agency Alliance for Children, and Youth Villages. And many of those providers actually operate schools on their campuses because they take some of the state's most vulnerable children and they treat those children in those facilities. And since they can't actually go to public school, they educate them on site. Many of them have SACS accredited schools. They have highly qualified teachers. In the FY 2018 budget, and I believe this is at 24.12.4 in your budget document, there's an adjustment made or proposed to be made of $560,639 as a reduction. In this year, there's approximately $5.8 million in total grants that are distributed to 21 facilities in these non-QBE formula grants. And I will remind you that those are the monies that make up the local share that those students would otherwise get if they were in public schools. So we're here today just to say, please take a look at that number and see if that number is accurate, because we've had some concerns that because of the numbers of kids that are coming in the child welfare system, actual numbers are going up. So we see more kids. So we're concerned that there's somehow a decrease in the funding proposed. And I had the pleasure of having conversations with the chairman and Ms. Arroyo and a number of you to talk about this issue. So that's why we're here today, and we're happy to answer any questions or provide you additional information. Thank you.
Thank you for being there. We have had a conversation. I know we are looking into that. And do y'all understand a little bit what's going on? If you got your, I don't think anybody's got the tracking sheets here, but we are conscious of that. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there any questions?
I just had a question. Do we know why that cut was made? What was the reasoning behind that when we do have increased students? Has anybody given an explanation of that?
This is the information that I was provided by DOE. They have explained that the FTE count has decreased from 816 to 798. That average daily attendance has decreased from 845 to 774. And the contract days have reduced from 4,082 to 3,899. And there is one facility which was on the list that was receiving the grant that has closed, and I believe that is Community Hope. And we had heard another facility may have closed one particular unit, and that was its Psychiatric Residential Treatment Facility unit, but I'm not assured of that, and I don't represent that particular entity. So, but I'm happy. That's the information that I've been provided.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Ed. Appreciate you being here this morning. Okay, next on our list, Teach for America and Ingram Grill.
It's a hard one.
You're going to have to help me with that. I'm sorry. I'm terrible this morning.
You are good. We have a couple of folders about Teach for America that we're just going to hand out to you before we start. Thank you so much. So,
And as some more of our committee meeting, come on, Vice Chairman, sit right here.
good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear us. And we wanted to come here really for two reasons. First, to thank you for your continued support.
Make sure you get that mic. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, I can turn it up
Thank
if
you.
need
Yeah,
to.
I'm a quiet speaker. So we wanted to really come here for two reasons. First, we really want to thank you for the support that you've provided to Teach for America over the last several years. It has made a really big difference in the work that we're able to do in communities throughout the greater Atlanta area. And we want to continue to have that partnership. And so that's part two of our request. Really, for those of you that are less familiar with what we do at Teach for America, we really recruit really high quality individuals, both right out of college and as well as career changers, to come into the education space to serve our most underserved students. And then we develop them. We spend 2 years really working really extensively to help them become really high quality teachers and to set them up on a path such that we have mobilized them to work towards educational equity in many different capacities throughout their career. So I'm a Teach for America Corps member alum, so is my colleague Ashley over here. And what we have found is on average, we have about 1,300 alumni in the greater Georgia, majority of them in Atlanta, but over 800 of them are still involved directly in education. And I want to say it's almost 1,000 that do things either on the side or through nonprofit work or through other work where they're still giving back to educational work. And we have about 400 folks in the classroom who are alumni, plus another 125 who are currently in their core teaching. So we have a good number of people still directly in our classrooms, directly impacting students. And we know what an impact that having strong teachers can have. I don't know if there's questions. We have some good information on results that actually you guys commissioned a few years ago for us.
Thank you very much. I got a question.
Sure.
Chairman Coleman.
18. Yes. Do you solicit mostly for high schools, or do you have any elementary teachers?
We have a lot of elementary teachers, actually.
One thing we're insisting this year, of course, the governor's thrust, education, State Department of Education, is teaching of reading by third grade. And we're finding that many, the universities tell us that their teachers come out with a strong background in the teaching of how, not overview, but of how to. How do y'all prepare these teachers for how to teach reading? Are they taught that? Do y'all have a program to do that?
We do, actually, and I'm going to let my colleague Ashley talk. We actually, not only do we very extensively focus on literacy, we believe regardless of what you are teaching, literacy, especially early childhood literacy, is sort of fundamental. You can't learn anything if you can't read. And so we actually, not in addition to the usual stuff that we do, we have a special early literacy initiative at a school that we have been working on. And Ashley leads that initiative, so I'm going to let her talk about it.
Go ahead.
Do you care if she mentions the literacy? What do you do?
Hi, so my name is Ashley Harris, and I'm with Teach for America, and we have a 5-year language and literacy grant that is funded by the Woodward Fund. So we're working with an elementary school in South Fulton, focusing on language and literacy. So it is about 3 elements that we're focusing on: high-quality teachers. So we have a large percentage of teachers that are Teach for America currently at the school, about 8. We also have wraparound services that feed into the language and literacy development. So we focus on mental health. The school has a high mobility rate, so we have additional social services that help support children in that. And then lastly, we partner with the Rollins Center, the Atlanta Speech School, to provide all the professional development for language and literacy.
Well, are you teaching them phonics, whole language?
Phonics, phonemic awareness.
You're teaching them the whole language. You teach them actually how to teach reading.
How to teach reading,
Okay.
yes.
And then, And then why are we just in the metro? A lot of our rural schools said they would love to have some of these teachers. Why are you focusing in the out of Metro Atlanta? Okay.
Sure. So we focus in Atlanta Public Schools, Fulton County
Right.
Public Schools, and Clayton County. We would love to actually go further out beyond just those three.
They would
school
love to
districts.
have you.
For us, it really comes down to we cannot afford to spread out that far. So we've worked with several of our counterparts in other states to figure out what it took them to go to rural communities.
Yeah.
And typically what it's taken is multi-year 7-figure grants from the state to establish another office. So we actually think it needs to happen.
Okay.
We just know we're not able to do it yet with our funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me follow up on that. Be a little more specific about your business model, where your funding comes from. With Chairman Coleman, what would it take? What is the bottom line hindrance of expanding?
Sure. So for us, I would say that the majority of our funding for our Teach for America Metro Atlanta office comes from foundations. And most of those foundations are Atlanta focused, which is how we end up in Atlanta. About 80% of our funding is coming from foundations. We also have school districts put a little bit of skin in the game because they pay like a recruitment fee for our teachers. And then beyond that, we have about, I think it's 8% that's coming from the state. So that is supporting what we do currently in Metro Atlanta. What we have found, so some of the surrounding states that have done a really big rural program, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, what they actually did was they spent like a year planning with the state government to say, we want to go to a more rural area. This is what it's going to take. We kind of went back and forth, worked really extensively to come up with what it looked like. But in every case, it's been multi-year 7-figure grants to make it possible because it requires another whole infrastructure and office in another part of the state.
Thank you. That's what I want to. Brooks, you got any more questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
The reading and the why not rural.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for the explanation.
Sure, and we're happy to provide more information on what has happened in the other states if it would be helpful afterwards as well.
Okay, Representative Glanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. And first, let me just say thank you for what you've done for Clayton County Schools. You've been very prominent in Clayton County, and we appreciate that. But my question is, when we went through the recession or depression, depending on where you lived, there was an increase in teacher availability and folks that wanted to go into classrooms. Now that the economy is rebounding and folks who were engineers or whatever other industries, are you finding a decrease in the amount of teachers that are now available? Or are they exiting? What's that status?
Sure. We have not actually seen a change in the percentage of our core members that stay in the classroom despite the economy. Where we've seen sort of the decline, because you're absolutely right, I'd say it's a nationwide decline in the number of people going into education since the economy has turned. So where we have seen that change is we start with a smaller class, I suppose is how I would describe it, to Teach for America nationally. We have followed the same recruitment standards that we've always followed, so we get close to 50,000 applicants every year. But instead of a core size of 5,000, we have a core size now about 3,500 across the nation.
Second follow-up to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second question is, oftentimes teachers that are brought up through the teaching industry have advanced degrees. They go out and get advanced degrees. They get endorsements. They get all those things that really make them special in a classroom. Are Teach for America teachers as motivated to go out and get advanced degrees and those things as well?
That's a great question. So what I would say is in their first 2 years, they're really just working on that alternate certification generally. Beyond that, folks that are staying in the classroom that want to go into leadership, they still need to follow the same sort of requirements as every other teacher in the state of Georgia. So we are seeing a lot of our teachers enroll through Georgia State and other places in educational leadership programs and increased pedagogy programs. So we are seeing that, but that becomes very specific to what that teacher is looking to do with their career.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll follow up.
That's a good question. I want to commend you. You do a terrific job, and you attract some of the sharpest. I know we had a couple of aides working with us that are in Teach for America now in North Carolina. Wish she'd have stayed here, Mary Margaret. But why because you go after, what is the magic formula you have, the reason you are able to, and we met this summer with all of our colleges of education. What is it that they can't get these students to do it? I mean, what are you doing? What makes yours so special? Why are you able to just go in there and get them, or what?
I mean, I wish I could tell you we had some magic sauce, because then I could tell you we could solve a lot of what's going on. I don't think we have like a magic sauce by any means. I think that one of the things that has helped us is from the front end, we're recruiting really, really strong people.
You go into the schools, the colleges, and
We're
look for
going
these?
into colleges, recruiting great people. There's also great people in education that don't do Teach for America. So it's not that we're getting
yeah.
the only great
Oh, I know.
like we're getting really good people, and then we're really investing in that development in 2 years. Like, as both of us as former core members can tell you, when I was in the classroom, the fact that I had someone in my classroom every 2 or 3 weeks giving me feedback and giving me coaching made me a much better teacher than some of my peers who were also new teachers, but literally had someone come in twice in the entire school year.
But they're not people that just can't find a job yet and say, I'm going to teach till I can find something, you know what I'm thinking?
I don't think, I mean, at least from my experience,
Okay.
like, the folks I taught with were all incredible. I just was lucky to have additional
Well, I mean,
development.
okay, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Nix. You good? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here this morning.
Great, thank you
Good
so much,
information.
Chairman Dickey, and thank you for your continued support.
Good program.
Thanks.
Okay. Next on our list, Joel Mackay.
Good morning, Chairman and rest of the committee. My name is Joel Mackey, and
I'm
with
sorry.
the law firm of Hall Booth Smith, and represent the Georgia Vocational Agricultural Teachers Association. And I'll try to be very concise, but I do want to bring four very quick points about the agricultural education program. As many of you know, I represent about 400 ag teachers spread across the state, and one of the things that makes agricultural education incredibly special is we have an intracurricular aspect of supervised agricultural experiences and the FFA program. You'll see FFA members here in about 2 weeks in their blue corduroy jackets. Part of that component is funded by the state extended day, extended year aspect of that. The governor's budget, which we're extraordinarily excited about, obviously proposes a 2% adjustment to the salary schedule. The extended day, extended year component of that for the line item in agricultural education did not have a corresponding adjustment. And we've asked the chairman and other members to consider an adjustment to match the state portion of extended day and extended year. That includes some of our young farmer programs. 70% of our young farmer programs throughout the state, 70% of the funding for our young farmer teachers throughout the state are state funding. So when the salary schedule is adjusted, that would be a corresponding need. Similarly, for young farmers and for our area teacher program, in I think it's specifically line item 2413 in the tracking document, there was an approximate $5,000 adjustment for the ERS or TRS employer contribution adjustment. That didn't cover the full scope of our employees, specifically the young farmer. So we've made a request that also be increased by a corresponding amount to match that TRS adjustment. Two other really quick points. We're extraordinarily excited that we're growing by an average of 14 new teachers every year. Part of that was during the period of recession. It peaked up a little bit more immediately. There was some pent-up demand. We've got 14 new requests for in-classroom teachers. We can provide y'all with that list of where those teachers are scattered throughout the state. But with that comes if you're going to fund the extended day, extended year portion of that, there's a corresponding demand for that funding. And finally, we want to thank this committee for their work in the capital equipment in the amended budget. It was included in the career tech line item. Hopefully the Senate is working on it this morning, a corresponding adjustment. That may be resolved in the amended budget, but $1.8 million of that is related to agricultural education capital equipment for FY 2018, and we would just strongly support that being resolved in the amended or if not in the FY 2018 budget. So those are kind of a summation of my comments, and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joel. You do have a question here.
Okay, great.
Representative Glanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, how closely related are you guys to the 4-H programs throughout the state? And is there an active recruitment, if you will, effort to get more African-American young people involved in the agricultural fields of that sort?
Right. It's a great question. Let me start with first with 4-H. 4-H runs through the Cooperative Extension Service, the University System of Georgia, specifically the University of Georgia. And they have a little bit different of a membership in the fact that I think you can be a first grader through all the way through high school. So it's different in the sense that FFA and agricultural education is intracurricular, and it's intracurricular, and so if you're going to be a member of an agricultural education program, take those courses, you're involved actively in FFA. So those are the distinctions in how they're funded and how they actually serve students. To the second part of your question, we have made a concerted effort to promote agricultural education in urban areas. That is because we see the future of the growth trends frankly, in the Georgia population. But the value of having a diverse student base to be a part of our program. If you look at the specific requests, for example, most of our new programs are in the North Georgia area. For example, we have a new program request for Clayton High School. There's one in there's capital equipment request in the Atlanta Area School for the Deaf. So we have some very much in this budget request, very specific areas targeting on new growth. As a FFA chapter, since I was a state FFA officer, there have been a tremendous amount it's changed drastically in the diversity of our student population. We've got an African American national FFA officer. We have I think last year had an African American state FFA officer, Hispanic American, Hispanic state FFA officer. So we are increasingly diversifying that, and part of the answer to that is making sure we get great teachers from a diverse group of background to come into our program and serve our students. And so you have this request, I think, helps support those teachers of all diverse walks of life to help come be a part of our program.
I'm sorry. Well, certainly if there's something I can do down in Clayton County to get those young people involved in a different, more diverse field, I would certainly be amenable to that. Down in Perry, I've seen so many things that's opened up my eyes. I got an opportunity to participate in the pig contest, with the pig thing. I did pretty good, and the house won again.
That's quite the contest.
It's a little tricky for you. Got to watch that back, if you know what I mean.
Much to Senator Wilkins' chagrin,
Yes.
I think y'all won it this year, didn't y'all? So.
Great question, Representative Glanton, and I certainly concur with what Joel says. These FFA programs and 4-H programs and the facility in Perry for young people, it's just really making a huge difference in their lives. And it's not just the ag component; it's the leadership component, it's the public speaking, it's all those components that I think are really make these programs so unique and so important, and I just really wish all our students in the state could take advantage of these extra programs. It's changed a lot of lives of young people, and I appreciate what it does. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Next on our schedule this morning is some people from DOE. When I first got this job, I was asking Chairman Coleman about some programs. He said, you need to go see Dr. McGibbony, and he can answer your questions. He's got it all. And then I ran into a good longtime friend of mine, Mimi Goodenrath, who I've known and really hadn't paid attention to what she's involved with, and had a great conversation this weekend. I said, well, why don't y'all come to our meeting at 8 o'clock this morning to talk? And I think a lot of y'all are way more up to speed than I am on what they're going to come speak about. But I wanted them to come because I wanted to hear it, and I didn't know if all of our committee, I know, Brooks, you are, and you've heard all this before, but they wanted to come, and so Dr. McGinney, if you'd come speak and introduce your team and talk about your programs.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and good morning, everyone on the committee. Many of you have heard us talk about school climate for quite a while now. And for those in the audience who are not familiar with that conversation, it centers around creating conditions in a school so a lot of good things can take place, including learning. And we have found through the research across the nation, in fact across the world, that the best framework for improving school climate is positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS. So we thought today, instead of you listening to me again, you'd have the opportunity to actually look at the people that are in the schools, in the school systems every day, and get a better understanding of why in Georgia we have gone from about 200 schools implementing PBIS to over 900, which is obviously a good thing. The challenge is a capacity issue. And there's a couple of dynamics that take place. When we go into a school and the team does a wonderful, a magnificent job working with schools, and many of them, they all come in at a different place, a different starting place, but they have the skills to take where they are and move them to where they need to be. But there are challenges with that. Of course, the capacity issue. More and more schools want to improve school climate because they see the value of improving school climate. But also, after a period of time, unless we have the technical assistance to go back and do retraining or follow up, we start losing some of those gains. So there's, again, as I said, a capacity issue. And we do really appreciate, more than you will ever know, the help that you've given over the years. In fact, we could not be where we are today without the help that you've given for the funding that pays for the staff in part, and also we have a school climate specialist in each of the 16 REISs that are part-time. They're being pulled in all directions because of the popularity, frankly, of the PBS. So we have the data that shows there's a direct link between improving school climate and academic outcomes. A strong correlation between school climate rating and scores on the CCRPI. A strong correlation, Chairman Brooks, between a school climate rating and third grade reading proficiency. The difference between a school climate rating of a 1 and a school climate rating of a 5, and 5 is good, on the percentage of students reading on grade level at third grade is almost a 40% point difference. So you want to improve third grade reading, you want to improve the conditions for learning, you want to improve teacher retention, you have to improve school climate. So I would, Chairman, like to introduce the team, the PBS team. The program manager is Justin Hill, who's going to tell you more specifically about PBIS. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely, Raymond. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've got to run to another appointment, but I wanted to say before I go, I'm one of the people who've been advocating for this, and I think I was probably one of the first people that got to the chairman here and told him that we need to look at this. I've seen it in my district, seen it all over the state, and before I leave, I just wanted to say, whatever they say, we need to look at trying to help them, because I really believe in this. From the very beginning, when I started talking with Gary about it, the way it has grown, I think shows how well the program works, and they've got the data to support it. So even though I'm going to have to leave, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Nix. And so anyway, Justin,
Well, Mr.
go
Chairman.
ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'll add a few things to what Dr. McGivney said, but not too many things. Again, this is the team that's been dedicated to this work, and you might ask, well, what exactly is that work? And again, I think the operative phrase for us is prevention. We're trying to prevent problem behaviors from occurring in the first place in a school environment. Traditionally, and I used to be a school administrator in Clayton County, and so I would sit there and wait for problem behaviors to occur. But what we do is we help form leadership teams at schools and districts to help them prevent those problems from happening. And so if a student doesn't go to the office in the first place because the misbehavior has not occurred, then they're not going to be suspended. And each time a student leaves the classroom, research tells us 45 minutes of instruction time is lost. So it's a big deal to leave that classroom, and we certainly advocate safety, but we're that team that's helping layer that. In addition, I do want to mention what you do have in front of you. So many of you have a handout that you've been given before in the Education Committee. What you have that it's a little bit different is a newsletter that we just published that certainly highlights some of the goings-on in the districts throughout the state of Georgia. And that was just published last week. And so you'll see some of the districts that we highlight, and our job is to tell a story of how they're implementing the things that we're helping them to do. Again, since 2008, which is our first cohort of schools until now, it's taken us that long to get to about 900 schools. And we've typically had about a team of 3, and then we're all federally funded at this point. And now we're going to eclipse 1,000. Again, the reason why that we've moved to that 1,000 mark, probably around March is when we're going to achieve that, is because we've added the school climate specialists at our RESAs who are part-time. And that has significantly helped us to expand our work into, now we're in half the districts, but as Dr. McGivney said, we're at capacity at this point, and we're trying to layer on as much sports as we can. But we're seeing large impacts. We typically see an average reduction of about 28% in office discipline referrals. And again, if a student does not come to the office, the student is not going to be suspended. We think those are good. And all the other outcomes that we see that Dr. McGivney mentioned, we know that PBI schools are typically have 4 and 5 stars in the climate star rating, and they're getting the other outcomes, which is we're very proud of. For a national context, there's about 24,000 schools nationwide that are implementing PBIS, and it's probably fair to ask, well, how does Georgia rank in that national picture? When we do get to the 1,000 mark, there will be only 8 states in the country that have trained 1,000 schools. So we're partnering with other states to try to build something that we can sustain, and our model really is the DOE coaches RESA specialists who help coach districts and who help in turn coach schools to see sustainability. The thing that we're concerned about, of course, is after about year 3, is we don't want those trends of those reductions in referrals and those reductions in suspensions. We don't want those to return back up through attrition. So we want to make sure that we're leveraging the appropriate support for those schools and districts. But we're not doing it alone. And this year we've also partnered with a grant project. And so Project Aware, which there's a handout with you as well. We're working with at least 3 districts to help layer in mental health services to schools and help them kind of connect the dots in their area and their schools, because we know some students need a lot more support, and that effort's there. And so Rebecca Glanton is here with us. So again, those partnerships is not just with us and Project Aware and the RESAs. We also have partnerships with DBHDD, trying to work on ways that we can align some of our efforts. DECAL, we're working with a joint partnership for positions, because we know that preschools need the same type of supports, and preschool classes are located in our PBIS elementary schools. So we should work on a dual-funded person from the DOE and DECAL. Also, we're partnering with Georgia State to evaluate our work to make sure that we're doing things and to be honest and tell us these are ways we can improve. And with Georgia College, State University, and Georgia Southern, trying to create some classes in PBIS so more professionals enter the profession already possessing some of these skills and this knowledge, and we think that's key to sustainability. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. We think we're getting good impact and good bargain for the investment. Any questions?
Yes, and I want to make a comment for Chairman Coleman. If y'all look in this brochure he handed out, I was called this past week by a principal, and he's right here, Jim Finch from Mary Persons in my district, and he was calling me about a totally different subject, another bill going through up here that he was had some comments to make to me about. And then I asked him, well, what about PBIS? And I didn't even know if you had it in his school or not. And then light bulb went off, and 30 minutes later, he was still talking about it. And he was, the quote here said, PBS has not only changed my school, it's changed my life, both personally and professionally. And he really went on that, and he just anecdote. He had to be talked into getting this in his program. He said he fought it tooth and nail, didn't think it would be appropriate for his school, and his whole thinking is turned around on that program, and I think Mimi was the one that talked him into to doing it. She was the one that talked him into it. So funny right here in this brochure that I had that conversation this weekend. So thank you for the comments. And Chairman Coleman's got a comment, question. Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, Representative Glanton.
That's okay. I wouldn't mind being the chairman today. And anyway, Mr. Chairman, I hate to monopolize, but this is something that's both these programs, Teach for America as well as PBIS, is extremely important to my community and my schools. And so I have two questions. Actually, the first question is the percentage of PBIS trained schools. I recognize that Clayton County has one of the lowest percentages of schools that are trained. The second question is, I grew up very, very poor in a housing project unit, whereas we had a lot of challenges at home. So it's one thing to deal with these kids in school, but is there any interaction, direct interaction with their parents to figure out what's going on with their situation at home and so on and so forth?
Yes, sir. So two parts. One for Clayton County. So I can speak to Clayton County's story since I was there. That's where I started my teaching career. That's where I started being an administrator. So Clayton County was actually one of the first districts that implemented this when it was called EBIS, or Effective Behavior Intervention and Supports, back in 2004. At that point, we're just training a bunch of random schools with university professors, and once the training occurred, the support structure kind of left. We're kind of on our own to figure this thing out. So recommendations were made to the district, but the district had some other infrastructure issues that they were going through with accreditation and things like that. So after things settled down in the district, we kind of re-engaged with the district, with Ms. Jackson, and we started building infrastructure slowly and correctly so that some of the things that they had gone through in the past, we can prevent those things from happening. And so we work with the leadership team and say, let's build a nice, slow, sustainable project. And so I think that's what we're seeing. So I think in Clayton, what we're seeing is just a nice, steady march towards improvement instead of the way we did it in 2004, which was kind of haphazard, and we just put about 10 schools into training, and the next year 10 schools without thought to how to support the folks afterwards. So that's kind of why the lower percentage, but it's a steady increase, and we're adding some cohort schools this year as well. But for the family piece, we recognize that family engagement and their needs are critical. And of all the things that we receive in our surveys, for analysis for our Twitter account and our Facebook, we know that how we can implement this same skill set in a school translates into the school. So right now we're working on some family modules. In fact, Mark Feinweaver, who sits at the end, if you could raise your hand, sir, he's working with several people to layer in some of those family support projects. We're working on a training, and we think we're going to have that concluded about the third quarter of the fiscal year and start rolling that out, because you're absolutely correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I have another question, Ms. George.
You mentioned having PBIS or a component of that in your teacher preparation programs at Georgia State, at Georgia College.
Georgia College and
State
Georgia
University,
Southern.
and also at Georgia Southern. Has that begun yet?
It started, this is the first semester, and it's not for the teachers per se, it's for the teacher leaders. So it's probably for folks that have already been teaching in the field about 3 years. It's the foundation approach. We'd like it to be in the teacher preparation program as well, but that's where we've been able to partner at that first stage, and so that we can get at least leaders to come in and help support the schools, so they can help shoulder the burden with us is the idea.
Thank you.
But right now, Professional Standards Commission is actually reviewing the path that Georgia Southern has put together, and hopefully that will translate into an endorsement that will carry with it some credibility out in the field.
That would be very helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? I see none. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Is anybody else from your committee, Dr. McGivney, that needs to speak or do anything?
Sir, we appreciate your time.
I do have a question. If for funds for this program, how would we know if any funds, additional funds? How would we know that it would go for PBIS? How could we direct additional funds to know where it would be used through the RESAs or
Well,
what's your funding?
Two things come to mind. One is, of course, the RESA school climate specialists are part-time, and they're taxed. In fact, if you use the number of hours they have to work to help the schools, some of them have already reached those hours, and we're only in February. So for those to become full-time would really help the local schools when they're implementing and training and getting used to and following through and going through the learning process of changing the climate through PBS. You understand, because each of you have been there before, change is not easy, particularly if a school has done the same thing for decades, and to go in, this is a change. So it takes the skill level these folks have is incredible, because not only are they teaching a framework of PBIS, they're also change agents, and they're coaches, and they're cheerleaders. They have to do all that, but so are the school climate specialists in the RESAs, and they're only part-time. And we really, if we're serious about helping the schools at the level that they really need the help, they need to be full-time.
Mr. Chairman, we're pushing this year with the reading. We're talking about that tax credit that we're talking about. Really empowering RESAs more with reading, because I mean the State Department, they just don't have enough staff, and I know Kevin can tell you we're working this, but we've got to have some hands out there. And I think one of the aces in the hole has got to be our RESAs out there, especially in the South Georgia area now. Metropolitan Atlanta, Cobb's, Gwinnett, they have the staff, but I think that we really need to look at that RESA.
Okay.
What they've done.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I could add also, in addition to that, many of my staff, for example, Mimi, whom you know, they are charged with managing at least 3 to 4 RESA districts. That's a huge amount of districts. Ms. Tara Davis, if you could raise your hand. We should have only one person to support the Metro. She supports the Metro plus another RESA. And so what we try to do is our coaching framework is that we help coach those school climate specialists to be us in the field. But if we have 50 schools or 50 districts, pardon me, some of us can never even get to the district that's on our management list. And so the feds, some of our federal partners that have come in and analyzed our work, have said, you should have no more than 2 of you to be at the RESAs, which would mean at least 2 more of us to help manage that, because we're all federally funded at this point.
One comment too at the RESAs. What's so interesting, Metro RESA is swamped, but the local systems, that's where 90% of the need is for positive behavior. But I will say this: metropolitan schools don't use RESAs like the rurals do, and that's another problem you're having, because getting the superintendents to use you and work with you. So that's a real unique problem with Metro RESA. The rurals have it, but 90% of our problems are in the metro area. You're exactly right. So you're swamped. I know that.
And some of our staff travel thousands of miles each. We've done a little bit of analysis of our Road Warriors, which is next year's theme. This year's theme is being a superhero for kids, but next year it's more like being, Mad Max and Road Warriors. We're just out on the street all the time. But if you'd allow me or indulge us to introduce the team, because we don't get the opportunity to come here a lot.
Please do.
I'd appreciate that. Mr. Mark Feinweaver, Mr. Tony Feldman, our newest member, Ms. Debbie Keene, Sandy DeMuth, Ms. Tara Davis, Rebecca Blanton, who does Project Aware, and Miss Mimi Gudenrath.
Well, thank you. Great looking
Thank
team.
you.
I appreciate what y'all do. Very important, and I think our committee is very interested in it. So thank you.
Thank you.
At that point, I was going to call to see if anybody else has walked in, anybody else that wants to speak or address our committee this morning. Matthew Gamble. Okay. Thank you for being here. Is there any other business from the committee? Any other? Well, seeing none, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay.